So we are sitting down today with Lauren Grimley. Hi, Lauren. How you doing?
Hey, how are you doing, Maddie?
I'm good. So Lauren graduated in May, correct?
Yes, end of April,
May.
early May.
End of April, early May. And Lauren was a member of the Cohort-3 Software Development Bootcamp. And Lauren was actually part of the first cohort that did partial online learning. So she definitely has a different perspective. And she was an awesome student. So we're just going to talk to her a little bit about life after BCA and what she's been up to. So Lauren, how has life been since graduating from BCA?
Really great, actually. I think I might have been the first one of our cohort to get a job. I was one of the very first ones. I started actually, I think within 2 weeks of boot camp ending. So I work now for skiessentials.com, and they're great, and they took a chance on me and hired me through with BCA experience. So life has been pretty good, a little chaotic. Just because I work from home, like I'm home. I now live at work as opposed from working from home.
Yeah.
But things have been going really well. Things have been crazy but good since BCA ended.
Awesome. So what does a day in the virtual office look like for you? You mentioned you're working from home. I'm just curious about like that daily routine.
So everybody, you kind of have to establish a routine, because if you don't, I feel like you're just chaotic. So I try to keep it normal as if I was going to an office. Like I start each day at the same time. But for the most part, we meet, the company as a whole meets Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 a.m. Sometimes the meetings are 5 minutes, sometimes they're 30 minutes. So that's sort of the more routine, but for the most part, it's about 9 a.m. I get in and I start doing my work, sometimes a little earlier, depending if I'm feeling really motivated. But for the most part, it is kind of come as you go, get your work done. We've got projects. We always have something going on, big projects. So we try to go through everything, but it's pretty, it's flexible, but you have to make your own schedule. That's kind of how my mentality has been.
Yeah.
For the most part, my boss wants me, he tries to tell me to end at 5 o'clock, like a normal 8-hour day. Some days I'm a little later and really late.
It's hard. It's hard to turn off the computer at 5 on the dot.
It is, especially it's like if I don't have a drive or somewhere to go, it's like my living room is right over there. So
the commute's a little shorter.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been it's been good, but interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, of course. I'm sure that most people out there would agree with you on that point. So how do you think BCA has prepared you for your current position? Do you think that you felt you came in over-prepared, under-prepared? Was there like a learning curve? I'm sure there was with any job.
Yeah, so definitely a big learning curve for me. This was a whole completely different, separate career path I took. I was more in government utility work, so this was completely different. But in the current job I have, I use PHP language, which we don't learn at BCA, but going to BCA actually really helped me prepare myself for learning how to read the language and what it's doing. So that helped me kind of translate those skills over to my new job. So I think if I didn't do BCA, I would have no idea, because I had to learn a completely new language. But I just did that before I started my job. I had 12 weeks of that. So it was, it really prepared me for how to do that. So, and then I use a lot of HTML and CSS as well. So it wasn't a complete, had to relearn all, like there was some stuff that we learned that I then translated over as well. So I think BCA actually really gave me a lot of like solid, like basic skills to take this job, and then now just growing with it. So
yeah, of course. So I'm curious, looking back on your boot camp experience, what is one thing you wish you knew before joining a boot camp?
I kind of knew this, but didn't know this was, it's going to take time for you to be an expert. It's going to take time for you to realize that you are not going to come out of that and just like ace it. Like there's always going to be people better than you. The languages change, things change. And even just developing, websites or what people want, like things are constantly evolving in software development. So knowing you're not going to be the best right away, or it's going to take you a long time to be an expert. I wish I had more realistic expectations. I was a lot harder on myself than I needed to be.
Right.
So if
you wish you had learned a little more patience going into it, like patience with yourself, patience with the course. I think that's something that we hear a lot.
Yeah. So I think if for myself, it was just like, you have to know you're not going to be the best right away. And that's a little bit hard for someone like me. You know, I'm stubborn and I like to do well on things. So.
Yeah. Well, you're doing incredible. So definitely give yourself a pat on the back for that. But so what, kind of jumping off of that, what would you say the most difficult part of your boot camp experience was? That can be like a general, like, frustration, or it can be like a really specific part of the course that you had a lot of trouble with.
Ooh, my biggest thing was knowing when to quit. Was, you know, you code and code and code it, and you think like, okay, I've already been doing it for 8 hours, 10 hours, like, especially when you're working on projects over the weekend. You become just useless after a certain amount of time. And I still do that now in my job. I'll still keep going some days really long, like way longer than 8 hours, and you become completely useless. But you think, I can keep doing it. If I just keep going, I'll get it. Well, that's not always the case.
Yeah, everyone has their threshold for, like, you know, you at a certain point you just have to be like, I'm gonna quit and I'm gonna pick it back up in the morning. And
exactly. Your efficiency,
to know when.
Yeah. The efficiency like tapers way down after a certain time. And Bob always brought that up to us. He's like, okay, there's studies out there, like, don't keep going. You need to take breaks. You need to just stop and walk away. And so that was definitely my most frustrating thing, but I still haven't broken that yet. I still do it. So.
It's a work in progress. That's okay. So on top of that, what would you say the most rewarding part of your boot camp experience was? Like, what was the biggest win or the biggest, like, triumph that you had during the time?
So I would say that working on the capstone was, that was definitely bar none the most rewarding. I worked on the Park Burlington app, and coming up with a solution of something that I experienced and many people have experienced in Burlington with parking, the frustration, the annoyance of it, everything. So, and our project we went through a lot of ups and downs. We started down one path, scrapped it after a week and a half. And mind you, you know, it's 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks that you have to do it. So taking almost half of it, scrapping it, and then rebuilding it and creating something that they really liked. I felt really, really, really proud of the work we did. And I know they're still trying to implement the work we did. The city of Burlington wants to put this in place. So I felt like all the time that we took, the 4 of us, to do it, we worked really well together, and we created something that was super successful and, you know, that somebody wanted. So it was just.
No, I remember seeing your project and I was like, that is something I would totally use, and that is totally necessary in a city like this where parking is a real pain sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with a hole in the ground and construction. Like, there's always construction downtown. So.
Oh yeah, of course. And so you guys were working on a real world project where, like, your audience were people that you actually knew, and maybe even yourself and people in your family and in your life that could really benefit from something like that.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. So that bar none was the most rewarding. Cool. Or just getting anything to work in general was really great too.
Yeah, exactly. So what would you say, what is the best tip for brushing up on your coding skills? Do you have, like, little practices you implement on a daily or weekly basis? What would you recommend to someone who maybe graduated from a boot camp a year or so ago and hasn't really been, you know, trying to teach themselves consistently?
Yeah, so I would say a great tip is just to keep refreshing yourself. Like, go on, like, code it, like anything, like free code camp, they have stuff just to rehash, like, basic things, because you're gonna reuse it. Like, there's things I'm like, I know we did this at BCA, and so I found all my old notes. I'm a big note taker.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
so I found old notes, I reread stuff, it's just constantly kind of just revisiting it, just refreshing your memory was huge for me. And I think just going through that, and also doing practice things, like there's a lot of tutorials out there that people just have on their blogs, and or, you know, on Free Code Camp, or there's couple other ones. I'm sort of blanking on them right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information out there, a lot of things to practice on. So just keep practicing and not just reading it or copying and pasting, actually type it out so you know what the heck it's doing. So that's what I found very useful for me.
Yeah, awesome. So what is your favorite thing about software development and coding? Like, what is the most rewarding part of being a part of that career path?
Well, I think it's sort of really fitting now is that, the world we're in and tech, all the companies that were lacking in tech had to adapt and create something or be viable in this business, a website that is functioning, that actually works and talks to everything that they use so that they can stay in business. You need that now. And I think for me, it's really being able to build and be part of it and creating something that, one, people like, and two, people use and it's helpful for them. Like we're all, my company, skiessentials.com, we're an e-commerce site. So you need to have a site that people want to go to and that actually is functional and works and they enjoy it. Like they don't get frustrated and leave the site. So being part of that and realizing it's like, this is the way it's going. Like everything is online now. So you have to create something that is important and that works and works well. So
totally. You are serving the people. So kind of jumping off of that, do you feel as though, even though it was only for half a semester, do you feel as though learning online kind of prepared you for this new normal that we're seeing?
That's a really good point. When we went online, I was sort of unhappy. I think a lot of us were in our cohort because you get a lot out of being in class, but immediately going from, online and having to adapt to now working, like I've met a couple of my coworkers like once, maybe just once, but I only see them online. So you kind of, this whole working for a new office, it's all virtual now. Like for me right now, it's all virtual. So it really created like, okay, this is how I'm going to have meetings. This is how I'm going to communicate. This is how I'm going to learn, a lot with my boss and others in the company. So it sort of gave me that, whatever it was, 6 weeks, 7 weeks that we had of it. So it gave me really good experience just to be like, okay, this is how it's been. So it wasn't a big change. It was like, okay, we just transitioned to now my job doing this. So it made it much easier as opposed to being in person and then having to go strictly online and then do everything. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah. I could see how that would be like a really helpful sort of practice run for what you were about to embark on.
That's exactly. And it was easier for the fact of starting like BCA and having it in person where it's like, okay, you make all your buddies, it's a little easier, but then you transition those skills you learn. So it was less for me to be like, oh boy, what do I do?
Exactly.
Shock was damning.
So just a final question, just a fun one. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Ooh, good question. Hopefully still in this, software development, web developer area that I'm in. I actually really do enjoy it. I could see myself being more, my experience is sort of managing and project management, that I could see myself going into that realm of creating bigger, being the project manager for other developers and, doing that type of work. But right now I actually really enjoy what I'm doing. So if I did this for a couple more years, just really honing in and growing on my skills, I'd be okay with that, building my level from junior to, mid to then, senior would not a bad gig either. So
yeah, not a bad gig at all. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us, Lauren. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'm glad we got to chat about your experience and where you see yourself headed. And we are really proud to call you a BCA alumni. So
awesome. Well, thanks, Maddie. This was fun.
Thanks. All right. Bye, everyone.